folks. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, Bill Reimer, your reluctant prophet. I'll begin with the preamble to today's session. We're in a crisis here in the West, unlike anything we've ever seen. This is a crisis which has been long in the making, due to our lack of confidence in our own cultural heritage, due to our rejection of the grand narrative about God, and due to our universities being taken over by critical theorists. Everything downstream of our universities has been completely corrupted by parasitical ideas whose express intent is to deconstruct civil society to replace proper civil order with a utopian vision that is dystopic and nihilistic to the core. Any jackass can kick down a barn, but it takes a carpenter to build one. This so-called progressive vision is rapidly creating a dystopic reality where the very meaning of words are being altered in order to reject the very nature of our humanity. And this is a crisis which isn't about to go away, no matter how much we wish it would. It simply cannot be cured by electing yet another politician from the same political parties that not merely only allowed the crisis to happen, but actively cooperated in creating the crisis. This is why conservatives have adopted the language of the left out of a vain attempt to appease a monster that exists for the following basic purposes: to garner sufficient power to tear it all down without ever offering a better vision for the future of humanity that isn't terrifying. In this episode, I'll seek to apply a methodical means of restoring what has been torn down by those I like to label as Marxo-fascists, since this new, ever-morphing ideology combines all the worst totalitarian ideas of the 20th century. My ancestors were Methodists who believed in applying a set of principles in their divine worship, which would constantly renew their personal relationship with God through Christ. The Methodist movement had such great effect in Great Britain that it is known to have prevented Britain from succumbing to the same revolutionary fervor that led to the murderous French Revolution. So I will attempt to do something similar by proposing 14 points of action aimed at restoring godly civil order. Therefore, I invite you to follow along by keeping this blog open as you watch the video, so that you may both read my words and hear my voice as I explain this process, since I invite you all to participate in it. Moreover, that it is necessary that we participate if we are to hope for godly order to be restored. Allow me to read from the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 18 in the King James Version. I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear, and anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. Subtitle: Our Present Dilemma. You may not like what I am about to state. In fact, I don't like my observations either, even though I know them to be fundamentally true. There can be no political solution to a moral, philosophical, and indeed spiritual crisis. We are witnessing a species of mass psychosis made possible by social media and the algorithms which control it. AI has become the preferred tool of ideologically possessed manipulators who are driven by a curdling ressentiment, which causes them to see life through Hegel's dialectical lens. We are witnessing an emerging administrative surveillance state which is utterly incapable of managing itself, yet it is beginning to assume total control of our lives, even on a global scale. The ever-expanding role of government, made possible by a metastasizing, ideologically possessed bureaucracy, has completely undermined the democratic will of the people. The military-industrial complex, high-tech, corporate pharma, and the investment banking industry, in league with Beijing, have co-opted our elected representatives to do their bidding to create the perfect blending of all the worst authoritarian ideas of the 20th century. I call this Marxo-fascism, which is a new tyranny more terrible than anything mankind has ever witnessed. An autocracy that seeks to capture the soul of humanity, to return us to serfdom, slavery, and worse, spiritual damnation. Collectively, we must awaken, for only those who are awake to this present threat to peace, order, and good government can stop this demonic nightmare from being fully realized. In this ideological battle for minds and hearts, we need to remember that we cannot stop the myriad manifestations of ideological possession without first understanding the lens through which our ideological opponents view the world. Due to them seeing the world through a lens shaped by Hegel's dialectical analysis, it is literally impossible to stop these radicals from dismantling society until we can help them to see the world based upon reality. Those captured by these lies view the world predicated upon parasitic ideas which closely resemble a Gnostic mystery religion. It is a false cult which has replaced the grand narrative upon which the West was founded, namely Christianity, which is why faith, family, and free speech have come under full assault. I find it troubling that many who share my concerns choose to play whack-a-mole with cultural radicals, not realizing that our reaction is their real action. The culture wars revolutionaries engage in policies intended to collapse capitalism and personal freedom, since they fully intend to have the state assume total control of the economy, legislate what you are permitted to think and say, as we conceive that the new laws that Justin Trudeau has just enacted in Parliament, dictate with whom you are permitted to associate, and limit where you will be allowed to go. Totalizing enterprises invariably exist for this express purpose, to exert power, since to them that's all there is. An all-powerful, all-knowing, godless, idolatrous tyranny where the state will have replaced the divine. In other words, a postmodern Tower of Babel doomed to collapse and confusion. This is due to the culture warriors seeing the world through the Hegelian lens of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, where two opposing ideas are melded into an impossible synthesized unity, which is why they can no longer tell the difference between men and women, insisting rather that they are essentially the same. Next subtitle, the backdrop for my proposed solution. I've often mentioned that in my previous life I coached managers in developing processes to create continuous improvement. I trained them in how to support their workforce, to provide their workers with tools and information to do their jobs correctly the first time. At the same time, I trained both managers and workers in problem-solving methodologies to reduce waste, cost, and unwanted variation. These goals cannot be achieved in a vacuum. What happens in one place of a business will also happen in another within the same business. Other managers unwittingly will have created a system of behaviors that are dysfunctional. Therefore, it is necessary to develop a systematic understanding of the interrelations between what may appear as disparate parts of the whole. This is why we must help others to see through a lens capable of replacing Hegel's dialectical analysis of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis to see life through a lens which reveals reality in all of its complexities. I will then further attempt to adapt Dr. Deming's system to reveal the spiritual nature of societal transformation, since it will only be through spiritual renewal that we will be able to stop the culture wars from tearing it all down. Japan played a very big role in the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo axis, which was the military coalition that initiated World War II and fought against the Allies. Its principal members were Nazi Germany, the Kingdom of Italy, and the Empire of Japan. The Axis powers were all united in their extreme authoritarianism and in general opposition to the Allies. However, they lacked the comparable coordination and ideological cohesion of the Allies. Subtitle: Shinto and Nationalism in Japan. Shinto can't be separated from Japan and the Japanese. But in the late 19th and first half of the 20th centuries, Shinto became an established state religion, inextricably linked to the cause of Japanese nationalism. The Japanese believed that the state was represented by the emperor, who governed them by divine prerogative. And therefore, they owed him absolute obedience. Next subtitle: How did General Douglas MacArthur, use Dr. Deming, among others, to rid post-war Japan of ideological possession? After World War II, the American teacher and consultant in statistical studies, Dr. W. Edwards Deming, was sent to Japan on 2 occasions by General Douglas MacArthur as an advisor to the Japanese census. During his time in Japan, Dr. Deming met with members of JUSE, the Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers, which had been formed in 1946 to aid in the industrial reconstruction of Japan after the war. Interestingly, a delegation from Bell Telephone Laboratories also visited Japan and showcased quality control materials that the Americans had used during the war. Dr. Deming's name was associated with this material, as he had contributed significantly to the development of statistical quality control courses. These courses, lasting 8 to 10 days, were attended by thousands of industrialists, engineers, and designers involved in the war effort. The program had a profound impact on both production quality and volume, leading to significant reductions in scrap and rework. In summary, Dr. Deming's expertise in quality control techniques, combined with his involvement in Japanese society, played a crucial role in shaping post-war Japan. His emphasis on statistical process control and quality management left a lasting legacy in Japanese industry and beyond. And all the links I've provided for that section, I used Bing in creating that section for that subtitle. So let's look at the system created by Dr. Edwards Deming, known as the Deming System of Profound Knowledge, which is a registered trademark, and so I need to mention that, or SOPK. SOPK is the culmination of Dr. W. Edwards Deming's lifelong efforts to define a comprehensive theory of management, which embraces his 14 points for management and acknowledges the deadly diseases he offered as symptoms of poor management. As first articulated in the late 80s and early 90s, Dr. Deming's system of profound knowledge provides a highly integrated framework of thought and action for any leader wishing to transform an organization operating under the prevailing system of management into a thriving, systematically focused organization. His book, The New Economics, presents a detailed explanation of his system of profound knowledge. According to Dr. Deming, in the fourth chapter of The New Economics, the first step of transformation of the individual. This transformation is discontinuous. It comes from understanding of the system of profound knowledge. The individual, thus transformed, will perceive new meaning to his life, to events, to numbers, to interactions between people. Once the individual understands the system of profound knowledge, he will apply its principles in every kind of relationship with other people. He will have a basis for judgment of his own decisions and for transformation of the organizations that he belongs to. The individual, once transformed, will set an example! Exclamation mark. Be a good listener, but don't compromise. Continually teach other people. Help people to pull away from their current practices and beliefs and move them into the new philosophy without harboring feelings of guilt about the past. Dr. Deming's holistic approach to leadership and management ties together seminal theories in 4 interrelated areas: appreciation for a system, knowledge of variation, theory of knowledge, and psychology. The system of profound knowledge promotes transformation through an outside lens. Now, this is the lens that can replace the Hegelian lens. That's my proposal. This lens can benefit anyone and any organization. In Chapter 4 of the New Economics, Dr. Deming adds, one need not be eminent in any part, nor in all 4 parts, in order to understand it and apply it. The 14 points for management out of the Crisis Chapter 2 in Industry, Education, and Government follow naturally as application of this outside knowledge for transformation from the present style of Western management to one of optimization. Next subtitle, this transformation includes, and here's Deming's 14 points. So I'll read them, each one. Point 1, create constancy of purpose toward improvement of product and service with the aim to become competitive, to stay in business, and to provide jobs. 2, adapt the new philosophy. We are in a new economic age. Western management must awaken to the challenge, must learn their responsibilities, and take on leadership for change. 3, cease dependence on inspection to achieve quality. Eliminate the need for inspection on a mass basis by building quality into the product in the first place. 4, end the practice of awarding business on the basis of price tag. Instead, minimize total cost. Move toward a single supplier for any one item on a long-term relationship of loyalty and trust. 5, improve constantly and forever the system of production and service to improve quality and productivity and thus constantly decrease costs. 6, institute training on the job. 7, institute leadership. The aim of supervision should be to help people and machines and gadgets to do a better job. Supervision of management is in need of overhaul, as well as supervision of production workers. 8, drive out fear so that everyone may work effectively for the company. 9, break down barriers between departments. People in research, design, sales, and production must work as a team to foresee problems of production and in use that may be encountered with the product or service. 10, Eliminate slogans, exhortations, and targets for the workforce, asking for zero defects and new levels of productivity. Such exhortations only create adversarial relationships, as the bulk of the causes of low quality and low productivity belong to the system and thus lie beyond the power of the workforce. 11A. Eliminate work standards and quotas on the factory floor. Substitute leadership. 11B. Eliminate management by objective. Eliminate management by numbers, numerical goals, and substitute leadership. 12A. Remove barriers that rob the hourly worker of his right to pride of workmanship. The responsibility of supervisors must be changed from sheer numbers to quality. And 12B. Remove barriers that rob people in management and in engineering of their right to pride of workmanship. This means, inter alia, abolishment of the annual or merit rating and of management by objective. 13. Institute a vigorous program of education and self-improvement. And 14. Put everybody in the company to work to accomplish the transformation. The transformation is everybody's job. And that's from Deming, W. Edwards, Out of the Crisis, MIT Press, pages 22 to 24. Dr. Deming's system of profound knowledge provides a distinct map of theory for people in all organizations to continually improve with the aim for everybody to win. So here's, you need to have this picture up before you. This is Deming's lens of profound knowledge. There's 4 circles, all overlapping one another, each with a different quadrant, okay? On the top is the theory of knowledge, what it is to know. To its right and lower, psychology. Below that and in the middle, appreciation for a system. And above that and to the left, understanding variation. Where these 4 circles overlap, that is where profound knowledge exists. In order to manage a business effectively, there must be a fundamental understanding of those 4 things. So, now, I will propose how we can adapt Dr. Deming's lens, with apology, to the brilliant and eminent Dr. Deming, late Dr. Deming. Lens of profound understanding of God's purpose. In my 4 concentric circles at the top, a revelatory knowledge of God. Below it and to the right, and make sure you have this blog up before you so you can look at it for yourself. Below that and to the right, understanding man's fallen nature and sin. That includes, of course, our own fallen nature. On the very bottom and in the middle, appreciating our relationship and duties to our fellow Christians and society writ large. And above that and to the left, understanding why we often fail to fulfill God's will. And where those 4 circles intersect, that's the lens of profound spirituality. So here's my adaptation of Dr. Deming's 14 points to counter the present culture war. 1. Create constancy of purpose among Christians toward improving how the dissemination of God's holy truth can overcome ideological possession while winning new warriors in this ideological battle on behalf of Christ. 2. We must come to understand our opponent's ideology. Society is in the midst of a new culture war. Western leaders, both spiritual and secular, must awaken to this challenge, must learn their responsibilities to defeat the voices which seek to tear down our culture, and to take the responsibility of leadership to restore godly order. 3. Cease dependence on others to restore sanity, and eliminate the belief that it is someone else's job to speak truth to the powerful who seek to gain total control over our speech. 4. End the practice of awarding control of education on the basis of convenience. Move toward a single unifying cultural vision which will renew faith in our institutions, whose job it is to preserve our Christian heritage while renewing loyalty and trust in the basic values we inherited from our forefathers. 5. Improve constantly and forever our methods of outreach, preaching the gospel as an antidote to ideological possession to increase our effectiveness as missionaries in service of the truth. 6. Institute training the whole church in the meat of the word, not merely the clergy who have failed to counter the lies of the evil one. 7. Institute church leadership based upon the pattern spoken of in the Holy Scriptures according to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 26, King James Version. How is it then, brethren, when ye come together, every one of you hath a psalm, hath a doctrine, hath a tongue, hath a revelation, hath an interpretation. Let all things be done unto edifying. The aim of Christian fellowship should be to help believers function as the Scriptures admonish us, rather than merely sitting and listening to a sermon while we stand and sit when invited like so many robots who do not actually participate actively when we gather. Our meetings are therefore in need of overhaul, as well as those who are supposed to lead them. 8. Drive out the fear to speak out, so that everyone may work effectively for the perpetuation of the gospel of peace in the face of the onslaught of the prevailing ideological possession. We need to admit that the present prevailing ideological possession can only be driven out with much prayer and fasting. Ephesians 4, verses 14 to 16, King James Version. That we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro, and carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. But speaking the truth in love, may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth, I'll say it again, every joint supplieth, according to the effectual working in the measure of every part, making increase of the body unto the edifying of itself in love. There cannot be any misunderstanding about what those scriptures mean. We are being lied to by our church leaders. 9. Break down sectarian barriers between denominations. People possessed of the new birth must set aside arbitrary divisions in the church to work in unity as Christ's body, armed with the wisdom to foresee and counter the inevitable problems we will face as we fight this Marxo-fascist ideology. 10. Eliminate simplistic memes, slogans, and silly explanations for the complexities of this ideological possession. Such reductionist nonsense only helps to create unrealistic expectations, or worse, the idolatrous belief that the next great leader can solve a moral, philosophical, and spiritual crisis. The bulk of the causes for ideological possession belong to a Marxo-fascist system which has inhabited our cultural institutions and thus lies beyond the power of any one person to resolve, except all of us collectively. 11. Eliminate unattainable goals and timelines to defeat Marxist fascism and substitute that for true spiritual leadership. 12. Remember the barriers which rob the ordinary Christian from the right to being disciples. It is the responsibility of church leaders to assist in equipping the entire body with the full armor of God. 13. institute a vigorous program of education and spiritual growth so that each fellowship has a powerful team of faithful believers, ready, willing, and able to counter the Hegelian dialectical nonsense and idea pathogens of the woke cult. 14. Put everyone in every congregation at work to accomplish this spiritual transformation. It is everybody's job to fulfill what Jesus has admonished us to pray. In Matthew 6:10, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Now, my final thoughts and my earnest prayers for you, dear brothers and sisters. If his will is to be done on earth as it is in heaven, we will need to understand the complexities of our present situation. This process must invariably begin with ensuring that we are living in the will of God. That, my friends, must first begin with our individual repentance, and then an acknowledgement that the church, in its present state, has failed to counter the leading false doctrines of our time. We are worse off than the local church in Pergamum, written of in the book of Revelation, which needed to repent since it had fallen prey to Nicolaitanism, which was a cult that distorted Christian teaching. The struggle of the Nicolaitans echoes the importance for us in discernment to resist false doctrines. Yet what do I hear from most local fellowships today? Next to nothing useful to counter the prevailing false ideology of our time, which has literally captured and hollowed out our sacred institutions to corrupt our system of governance and pervert and subvert the rule of law. A species of godless perversion so ridiculous that its disciples can no longer state with assurance or certainty the difference between men and women. In an article written by Jamie Sarkanak in the National Post entitled, "We Didn't Need Person with a Vagina Added to the Vernacular for the Second Time in this past year, the Supreme Court of Canada has adopted terminology promoted by gender activists," published March 14th, 2024. I'll read from that article. The term person with a vagina made its legal debut in Canada last Friday. It's inclusive speak for woman, and now it's part of the vernacular of the Supreme Court. The decision in which it was used, R.V. Kruk, dealt with sexual assault and whether it was correct in law to assume that women know when they are being penetrated by a penis. That answer turned out to be yes, as one would imagine, but the reasoning to get there took a bizarre route. Writing for all judges except for Justice Malcolm Rao, who wrote a concurring opinion, Justice Sheila Martin wrote, "Where a person with a vagina testifies credibly and with certainty that they felt penile vaginal penetration, a trial judge must be entitled to conclude that they are unlikely to be mistaken." While the choice of the trial judge to use the words "a woman" may have been unfortunate and engendered confusion in context, it is clear the judge was reasoning that it was extremely unlikely that the complainant would be mistaken about the feelings of penile vaginal penetration. This wasn't a ruling on how to properly identify the sexes. Indeed, what it was trying to do was make the distinction between women in general, a woman, and a particular woman at the center of the case. But the effort to dispel any confusion did not pay off, and the passage ended up puzzling lawmakers and laymen alike. While the decision mentioned the word woman more than 20 times in one instance, it opted to crudely identify people, in this case the victim of rape, by their genitals. The vocabulary used isn't central to the case, but it's still noteworthy, given that it was deliberately chosen. Yes, madness has invaded The Supreme Court of Canada's the Supreme Court of Canada. While our tax dollars are being used to fund this ideological insanity. Can't make this up. It's time to unite. I pray for you all. Pray for me. So these are my thoughts and my suggestions today. Let me know what you think. Come and debate with me. Reason with me. And if you possessed the new birth, pray like you've never prayed before. God bless you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.